So here we go again, Magic of Einstein, 1905, light speed constant means light speed not constant. And unfortunately I have to spend a lot of time with Einstein because he's had so much influence on mainstream physics, and it's a lot of effort going through what has happened. But most of what's happening is he's doing some sort of magic. So getting on to his magic, first of all, there are several ways you can get light speed in vacuum as not being constant from what Einstein says. And that is contrary to the common belief that he says the opposite about light speed being constant. It's just magic. So I'm going to pass on these sort of issues. Einstein has not been translated properly into English. I've dealt with that in other videos, and I'm just going to go now by the usual bad translation that people go by. The second issue is ambiguity is created by the different types of light speed, such as local light speed and coordinate light speed, etc. And Einstein did not use that terminology, so going by what he says, trying to understand what light speed means from the context of when Einstein was talking about it. And of course there are other issues, etc. For instance, if you look at this paper by Einstein in 1911, which is called On the Influence of Gravitation on the Propagation of Light. What Einstein says in that paper is, he says, the principle of the constancy of the velocity of light holds good according to this theory in a different form from that which is usually underlies the ordinary theory of relativity. By that he must mean probably light speed in vacuum is not constant, i.e. by his magical convoluted way of talking about things, suddenly he's saying in 1911 that light speed is not constant. So in some way or other, Einstein's doing a magic trick and he's changing the meaning of words. Of course, the translation of Einstein is bad. It's saying velocity of light, and there is a problem of translating from German into English. Is it supposed to be velocity or is it supposed to be speed? And when he talks about ordinary theory of relativity, he presumably means the 1905 theory of special relativity. So going to Einstein's first paper, where from he starts creating problems, and that's published in June 1905. He has the idea about light speed and vacuum being constant. I'll point out again, in the German there was a problem when translating into English, is it velocity of light or light speed? But I put aside that problem and go with it being light speed. Also there's a problem that physicists now have different types of light speed, but Einstein in 1905 was not talking about things in that terminology. So going by the vague stroke ambiguous context he was saying about light speed in 1905. So now let's go to Physics FAQ website. It seeks to answer questions about light speed from a modern context in physics. And on this page it's called Is the Speed of Light Constant? ? So it starts talking about refractive index and other things. So skipping over that bit and getting to what is dealing with what Einstein is saying in 1905 with the light speed. So talking about it from Einstein's context. It gets to this on special relativity, where it says another assumption on the laws of physics made by the SI definition of the meter is that the theory of relativity is correct. So the assumption is from how they measure light speed that the theory of relativity is correct. It is a basic postulate of the theory of relativity that the speed of light is constant. This can be broken down into two parts. And those parts are: the speed of light is independent of the motion of the observer, and the speed of light does not vary with time or place. To state that the speed of light is independent of the velocity of the observer is very counterintuitive. Some people even refuse to accept that this is a logically consistent possibility, but in 1905 Einstein was able to show that it is perfectly consistent if you are prepared to give up assumptions about the absolute nature of space and time. So going through what it's saying, when it says some people even refuse to accept this is logically consistent, well, ideally it should be rejected. The theory should be rejected, because faced with the problems that the idea is ambiguous. But unfortunately there are people who accept the possibility. So getting on to the next bit, it says about why some people accept it, and that's when it says about it's consistent if you give up assumptions about the absolute nature of space and time. So repeating what it says, but in 1905 Einstein was able to show that it's perfectly consistent if you're prepared to give up assumptions about the absolute nature of space and time. So Physics FAQ claims that the idea of light speed constancy is consistent to give up assumptions about the absolute nature of space and time. But there is a big but. Einstein in his paper 1905 on special relativity never said anything about having to give up the assumptions about an absolute nature of space and time. Einstein does talk about absolute rest in that paper and saying he doesn't want to use it, but he says nothing about absolute space and time. And it's what I like to call moving the goalposts. It was something added later to relativity by those who came after him. So this idea of giving up absolute space and time, Einstein didn't have it in his 1905 paper, but people have added that idea later. So what's happening is somebody's reading Einstein's 1905 paper on special relativity, and in order to make sense of what Einstein was saying, added the idea that have to abandon absolute space and absolute time. Whereas Einstein in 1905 himself never said that. So going by what Einstein 1905 was actually saying about his theory, there is no abandonment of absolute space and absolute time. Going by that is Newtonian physics. And in Newtonian physics, light speed would be variable, not constant. By the way, when I'm saying light speed, I do mean in vacuum all the time. Thus, despite what Einstein is saying about light speed constancy, since absolute space and absolute time were being retained, light speed would thus still be not constant. And that's the magic of Einstein. Despite saying light speed is constant, that's light speed in a vacuum, he still has light speed as not constant in his theory. That's just magic. Einstein is very convoluted in the way he's speaking about things. That means he's twisting things around. So what we have is Einstein has a convoluted stroke twisted way of speaking of things. That's when he said light speed constant, which is in vacuum. What he really meant has to be twisted around to be, he meant light speed was not constant. What Einstein 1905 appears to be saying is that light speed is constant, but he says nothing about giving up assumptions about the absolute nature of space and time. Therefore, what he's really saying is light speed not constant. Einstein is a bit confused, therefore does not speak of things clearly. The moving the goalposts by those who came after him is just about them adding more confusion to what is already a confused subject. The relevant maths I've dealt with in other videos, and it's to deal with the magical manipulation of the maths. An issue to note is with physics FAQ, it then goes on to talk about the Michelson-Morley experiment. And although not saying the experiment showed light speed to be constant, does give the enforced impression that was what was meant by the experiment's results. Physics FAQ says the two scientists, Michelson and Morley, set up an experiment to attempt to detect the ether by observing relative changes in the speed of light as the Earth changed its direction of travel relative to the Sun during the year. To their surprise, they failed to detect any change in the speed of light. So the Michelson-Morley experiment failed to detect any change in the speed of light, and that might lead you to falsely conclude that the Michelson-Morley shows light speed constant. But as pointed out in previous videos, it doesn't. So I'll recap that by Norton. And this is the relevant paper by Norton, where he tells us, even today, this point needs emphasis, the Michelson-Morley experiment is fully compatible with an emission theory of light that contradicts the light postulate. So you can interpret the Michelson-Morley experiment without assuming light speed is constant, which is Einstein doing in 1905. Incidentally, Einstein in 1905 does not mention the Michelson-Morley experiment, so it's still a bit more of moving the goalpost. Einstein writes his paper in 1905, and then somehow the goalposts get moved, and it's supposed to be dealing with the Michelson-Morley experiment. So we have part of the method used by those writing about relativity from the mainstream. Those writing about it, the mainstream, will say things about relativity that are correct, but will mix it in with saying things that are either false or given the false impression, and they also move the goalpost. So back to what physics FAQ says, speed is a coordinate quantity and is therefore somewhat ambiguous. So it's admitting light speed is an ambiguous concept. What the rest of physics FAQ says after that just gets further wrong as far as I'm concerned. And this is part of the magic for Einstein. He built on ambiguous concepts that need to be amended, stroke changed by others after him, which is the move in the goalposts. Thus the magic of Einstein. The magic is, despite saying light speed is constant, the magic is it means light speed is not constant. It's just magic. And that's the end of this short video. Thank you very much. There is just so many other things though that I need to go into, and so I'm just pointing out this little bit. Thank you very much.